Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Hunt by Jack Cashill and Mike McMullen. Narrated by Timothy Andrés Pabon. Tony. He lingered in that sweet borderland between dream and reality, the warm breeze from the Tyrian Sea separating the curtains and washing over him, and she, ever so lovely, leaning in and whispering, "The evil ones are in the wire." She left as soundlessly as she came, the breeze cooling in her wake. It was sharp now and bitter. The evil ones are in the wire, he thought. He looked around. "I'm in Colorado, Angel." Yes, he was, but the sudden press of cold steel on the back of his neck reminded him that the evil ones were real, and very much in the wire. 18 days earlier. Day 1. Tony. Driving into the boys' school, Tony asked himself whether he'd rather be stalking the Taliban through the unholy hell of the Hindu Kush. And he wasn't sure of the answer. He really wasn't. Today was the first time this semester he had been called in, but the third time since Luke and Matt enrolled last year. The meeting wasn't going to be fun. He pulled his 1987 FJ60 Land Cruiser into the faculty parking lot, a sore thumb among the Priuses, Volvos, and vestigial Saabs, so loved by academics everywhere. His employer picked up the tuition, that was good, but he still wasn't sure the boys belonged here. Wasn't sure he did either. Dr. Heller was polite, she always was, and professional. Always that. In different circumstances, he might have even warmed up to her. She had that sexy librarian thing going for her. Tightly bunned hair, nerdy glasses, a hint of mystery. But today that thing held no charm. Someone once told him you could be no happier than your unhappiest child. And unhappiness, he knew, killed the libido surer than any emotion but fear. He made his way through the empty corridors to Heller's office. He was sure she meant well, but she didn't have a clue. Not many educators did. He walked through the already open door. She stood as he entered and gestured to a pair of comfortable chairs off to the side. "Luke's not a bad kid," she told him after some pointless small talk. "And he tests well, especially in math. But he's off to a shaky start again this semester. Even with his future here at stake, he will just not engage." "Can you clarify?" "It's hard to explain. He's not disruptive, not hyper, but he's listless and apathetic. He doesn't pay attention to details, can't stay focused. He's just not really here." Sorry to hear that. He did not disbelieve her. He had seen the signs himself. "Mr. Acero, I think it may be time to have Luke see someone." "Someone as in, like, what, a doctor?" "Yes, or at least a psychologist." Tony sighed. "But you know how that goes today. Kid comes in with some symptoms and the psychologist or whatever says he's ADD or ADHD. Let's send him to a doctor and get him on Ritalin or Adderall or whatever." "Not necessarily." "Not always, but all too often." "I understand your concern, Mr. Acero, but several of our students are benefiting from a controlled drug regimen." He tried not to show his disgust, but he could not help himself. "Doctor, when it comes to drugs, I have a problem with the word regimen." "They can be a useful tool, Mr. Acero." "Tool nothing. They define the user. They're out." He bristled at how coolly and clinically she suggested doping his kid. She had to know how he would respond. This part of the conversation they had had before. "I wish you would at least consider medication." "Not happening." "I am truly sorry." She paused, giving him that concerned guidance counselor look. "But we're at our wits' end. I wish there were some alternate solution, but as much as I hate to say this, you may want to start looking at different academic options." He stared at her, dead-eyed. "You know what he's been through, right?" Tony told her the story once before. He did not want to repeat himself. Luke was just 12 when his mother was killed. T-boned by a Ram 1500, a wasted peckerwood at the wheel. At the time, Tony was deployed at the tip of America's spear in Afghanistan. It took days before the brass could extricate him and get him home. Matt helped out as much as he could, but there was only so much a brother could do. The shock of it all rattled Luke. The moves Tony made to stabilize the situation made it worse. New state, new home, new school. Heller's downcast eyes told Tony she remembered, and remembered well. Yes, and you know we've tried, but he is so stubbornly reluctant to study or participate in class, it's like he's testing us. Tony crossed his arms over his chest. Luke has his talent. I am told he's an ace at video games, but we don't grade on thumb-eye coordination here. I'm not sure there's much more we can do. He was getting nowhere. He would have to share his plan. He knew in his bones she wouldn't buy it. I have an idea. I'm listening, said Heller. Out in Colorado, elk hunting season begins in mid-October. Heller arched her right eyebrow. Excuse me for being dense, but what does elk hunting have to do with anything? Let's call this a family version of Outward Bound, said Tony, leaning forward as far as he could. To survive a week beyond the grid, you've got to engage. Lots of orienteering, astronomy, basic math, physics, and following directions. Luke will come back a different kid. Thor Olafsson, a hard-nosed platoon sergeant he got to know during their harrowing days in the Shock Valley, slipped him this idea just a few days ago. Different, I'm afraid, in that he'll be even further behind. He'll have missed days of school he can ill afford. No, trust me. You'll see the improvement. Heller may have wanted to oblige, thought Tony, but she saw the world so differently she could not even fake interest. I wish I could be more encouraging, Mr. Acero, but you're not even close to convincing me that this is a viable idea. He paused. It was time to play his trump card. You know, if Luke has to look at a different academic option for next semester, so will Matt. Heller looked surprised. That would be a shame. Matt's a senior. You don't want to pull him out now. He's doing so well here. Yes, he is, Tony said with a smile. If you follow lacrosse, Doctor, you know Matt was the best face-off guy in the league last year. I've heard something about that. If you follow wrestling, you know Matt led you guys to the 4A state finals last season. First time ever. I'm aware. Matt won state in his weight class. The team almost won. I know that, too. Wrestling's big in Kansas, and especially big here. If Matt doesn't wrestle this year, the team's getting nowhere near Selena. Excuse me, Selena? Said Heller, her eyebrows arched. That's where they'll hold the state championship. Then the good doctor stared at Tony for the longest second, threw her head back, and laughed. He was kind of hoping she would. He just did not expect her to. So what you're telling me, Mr. Acero, is that unless I agree to your plan, I will cost the school state championships, and not just one, but 2 sports? Did I say that? Wouldn't help me with my year-end evaluation, would it? I suspect not, he grinned. If nothing else, Mr. Acero, you've convinced me how serious you are. She rose from her seat and extended her hand. Let me talk to his teachers. I guess we've got nothing to lose. It's Tony, he answered, standing now, shaking her hand, and noticing, despite himself, how unprofessionally violet her nails were. I'd appreciate that. He politely thanked the guidance counselor for her time, walked out to his vehicle, and began conjuring how to break it to his bitter little couch potato of a son that he was going elk hunting in a few weeks. The Aceros lived in a newish townhouse, designed to look old, at the apex of a cul-de-sac on the western edge of Shawnee, Kansas. His sister recommended it. She and her husband lived nearby, That helped, especially when he traveled. The town may have been a bit too white bread for his taste, but it was safe and calm and close to both the company HQ in Leavenworth and KCI, just a half hour, the Kansas Highway Patrol and the good Lord willing. He needed to be near a major airport, especially one so centrally located. His job put him on the road a lot, often to distant parts of the country, sometimes to different parts of the world. In a month, he would head up a team providing security for the Japanese delegation at the G7 summit in Aspen. His company had this project on the books for almost a year. When he realized that the summit timed well with elk hunting season, he and Thor, now a sheriff's deputy in Pitkin County, put in for tags in the April lottery and lucked out. Ironically, Thor had to bail when his office canceled all leave because of the summit. Thor suggested that Tony take the kids, a timely idea. With Luke acting out, he wanted to spend as much time with him as possible. Tony got home before the boys did and wandered around the townhouse, wishing he had the time to putter and an old fixer-upper to putter in, maybe in a few years. He watched from behind the storm door as Matt pulled up in his ancient two-tone Camaro, with Luke beside him. Matt smiled. He always did when he came home. Almost always, anyhow. Luke hadn't smiled, not really smiled, since his mother died. Matt. Luke looked at his phone and then at his older brother. "New slow-low, bro," he said without emotion. "You may have set the negative land speed record for a Camaro in the state of Kansas." If the shrimp only knew, Matt thought, but said nothing. The boys exited either side of the car and slammed the doors behind them. As he walked up to the front door, Matt put his game face on. Luke didn't have one. "Hey," Matt said with a grin as his father opened the door for him. "Heard you were at school today." In passing, he looked at his father close up and thanked whatever strains of his mother's DNA spared him those scars. Tougher times. Acne must have been a bitch, but the buzz cut? Couldn't blame that on the genes. Matt kind of liked being taller than the old man, too. Had him by a good 2 inches now. Still, he gave away about 20 pounds, and the difference wasn't fat. As fit as Matt was, no one was more fit than his father. He never kidded himself. Push come to shove, the old man would kick his ass. "Yeah? Who told you I was there?" "Just about everyone who saw the Zam in the parking lot." Zam was Matt's shorthand for Zombie Apocalypse Mobile. His dad had even begun to use the acronym himself. "Kinda stands out." "You think?" "It's not just the prehistoric paint job, Dad. But you got the only vehicle on the lot with a winch on the front, rock sliders on the sides, and a cargo rack on top. Hey, don't forget the swing-out fuel and tire carrier on the back." "No, gosh, my oversight." Tony invited his sons to grab a drink and meet him in the family room. They had something to talk about. Matt looked at Luke and Luke at Matt, each accusingly. Luke shrugged and went off to get a soda. Fearing the worst, Matt figured he would get it out in the open before his brother got back. "Anything wrong?" Matt asked. "Nothing new." His father seemed content to kill time. "That's good, I guess." "When's practice start?" his father asked. "Officially mid-November, unofficially next week." "How you guys looking this year?" "Good. Deeper than last year." "That'll help." "Yeah, it should." Matt was beginning to feel confident this meeting wasn't about him. He loosened up. "I asked Coach if I could move up to 195. 195? Man, you're fearsome at 182. That's your natural weight." Uh-oh, thought Matt. His father was giving him that look, the penetrating stare that preceded a major life lesson. He'd seen it before. "Yeah, maybe," said Matt. "But if I went to 195, I could eat more, bulk up, live like a human being my senior year." "What's your team's primary mission this year?" said Tony, now leaning in. "This year? To win state." He knew where this was heading, and it was too late to turn it around. Do you guys have a better chance with you at an unbeatable 182? Or you at a chubby and iffy 195?
Chubby?
Protested Matt. Still, he could feel himself surrendering. The old man had him on the mat, shoulders down. The team comes first, Tony smiled. But I didn't have to tell you that either. Maybe you did, Matt conceded. Luke took his sweet time returning to the room. With his drink in hand, he collapsed sullenly into his favorite chair. Matt marveled at how well his brother was able to communicate boredom and alienation without saying a word. The kid was getting easier to dislike by the day. I've got good news for you, and maybe some better news, said his father once Luke had settled in. Matt breathed easier. Now he knew it wasn't about him. He had been waiting for the other shoe to drop since the accident. It hadn't yet. Maybe it never would. Strange thing, though, sometimes, especially when he lay sleepless in the hours before dawn, he almost wanted to be found out. He wondered if he would somehow feel better the day a police car pulled into the driveway and took him away. It would shatter their world, he knew, but it just might save his soul. Tony. The good news? Asked Matt. I'm going to take you both out of school for a week. That's cool, said Luke, almost smiling. Tony knew he meant it. He hated school. And the better news? We're going elk hunting in Colorado. That's the better news, Luke groaned. Yes, said Matt. Yeah, right. Like I'm going elk hunting, Luke protested as though he had a choice. Excuse me? Said Tony. I'm not going, said Luke. Tony stood up and motioned to Luke. Come with me, please. Luke shrugged but offered no resistance. Tony led him out of the kitchen and sat him down on a kitchen chair opposite his own. There's something you are never going to do again in your life, he said in a tone that had chilled many a battle-hardened grunt. You're never going to talk back to me. Understand? Luke nodded, his eyes locked on the tabletop. And when you become a parent, never let your kids talk back to you. That is the worst thing you could ever allow them to do. Understood? Yes. Tony bored in with an icy stare. Yes, sir. Good. Now get your sorry little butt back to the living room. Fully composed, Tony followed his son and spent the next hour explaining the why of the elk hunt. Matt listened intently. He was the classic older son, Tony thought. Always dutiful. Almost always, anyhow. Humble, too. Usually, at least. That part surprised Tony a little bit. The kid had picked a winning lottery number in the family gene sweepstakes. Smarts, height, athletic ability, looks. Tony tried to conjure up the term from some distant biology class. Hybrid vigor, wasn't that it? Matt had pulled just the right combination from him and Angel. With his dark, swept-back hair and rugged features, he could pass as a native in just about any country in the Western world, and turn heads in all of them. And yet for all that, Tony could not fail to see the sadness in the boy's eyes. Unsure of its source, he chose not to probe, at least not for now. At 17, he had needed space, and figured Matt did too. Luke was problem enough. As usual, the boy zoned out. He had found solace from all that was new, strange, and disturbing in his Xbox. There, he was master. Outside of it, he was his mother's son, fair-haired and undersized. Once too sweet for his own good, he had turned cynical. Just another insecure, self-loathing kid on the cusp of adolescence. One who spoke only when spoken to, and then just barely. Tony was not about to let him drift, or get drugged. Luke was going elk hunting. He had no choice in the matter, and he did not have the cojones, thought Tony, to resist. Day 3. Pel. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Enough already, Pel grumbled. Marching down Boylston Street towards Copley Square, dressed in black from head to toe, the balaclava revealing only his piercing dark eyes. Pel was gripped by an emotion that he had been feeling more and more during these marches. Boredom. He was too bored to even respond, "Our streets," anymore. He had done this too many times in too many places, for too many causes. Whose streets? Please. These streets aren't ours. Who are they kidding? In 15 minutes, these streets would not know that he and the rest of the Black Bloc had ever been there. Hell, the only people who had made an impression on Boylston Street since the Revolution were the Tsarnaevs. Jahar may have been a clown, but Tamerlan was kick-ass. The Boston Marathon? That took some balls. Pel joined the Mixed Martial Arts Center, where Tamerlan worked out a year or so after Tamerlan went down. A lot of guys there knew Tamerlan, and at least a few of them bragged about it. Pel got close to one of them, a tough little dude from Azerbaijan who put Pel in touch with a tougher character still, a guy who had the clout and connections to make things happen. If this guy bought Pel's plan, in a few weeks' time, he and Moom were going to make the Tsarnaevs look like, what did O call it? Yeah, the junior varsity. That's it, he laughed. The JV. They'd show these reformist pussies how to protest the president. Full of unspent fury, Pel kipped a newspaper dispenser on the side of the street. It wobbled and gave him an idea. Moom. You sure you want to do that, bro? Pel was in a deep squat, trying to yank a newspaper box off its mooring. Yeah, he answered without looking around. There was no stopping Pel when he got an idea in his head. The man was a bull, bull-headed, too. Moom knew what was going to happen next. Yep. Pel picked the box up over his head, marched it over to the Uno Pizzeria on the north side of the street, and threw it through the plate glass window. Moom watched in awe as the glass shattered, the customers screamed, and the Black Bloc turned and cheered. His big brother did some crazy shit from time to time, no doubt about that. We got a lot going on, man, said Moom as Pel rejoined the march. Shouldn't we be careful? Don't be such a liberal, Pel snickered, wiping some glass shards off his black-gloved hands. Pel never tired of telling Moom how much he hated those sham anarchists and fake revolutionaries who lacked the courage and integrity to confront fascists. Let's blend. He grabbed Moom by the arm and led him into the crowd. The two ducked and weaved through the anonymous Black Bloc swarm. Pel laughed. No security camera is going to pick us out. Moom knew this to be true, but he knew, too, that his big brother could be one scary dude. Day 5. Tony. On the road before first light, Luke sulked throughout the drive, much as expected. Tony let him be and quietly counseled Matt to do the same. He'd put up with worse, and Luke needed the preparation that a camping trip in Missouri could offer. It took about 4 hours for them to reach the campground in the Mark Twain National Forest. The Ozarks weren't the Rockies, but they could test you. In fact, any backpacking trip could make you eat your mistakes if you weren't careful. He planned to throw as much outdoor knowledge at his sons as he could. Fire starting, shelter building, some uphill hiking, orienteering with topo map and compass, anything and everything to survive in the woods, navigation included, day and night. No car camping here. Humping the rat lines in Afghanistan, he learned that if you couldn't carry your gear on your back, you didn't need it. He observed the boys closely but discreetly. He had confidence in Matt. He had been old enough to get the benefit of Tony's outdoor knowledge before his last deployment and their subsequent relocation. For Luke, who was too young to absorb much back then, it was pretty much starting from scratch. In setting up the campsite, Luke was close to useless. Tony said nothing. He wanted to let the glory of an early October Ozark day work its magic on the boy. He was confident it would. On their late afternoon hike, Luke began to loosen up just a little. When they reached a ridge overlooking some nameless valley, the oblique rays of the sun casting a magical light on the autumn-tinted slopes and the meadow below, Luke let loose with an almost involuntary, "For Missouri." This doesn't totally suck. Luke. Awesome, agreed Matt, now draping his arm over Luke's shoulder. Luke shivered, uneasy at the touch. Matt had not done anything that big brotherly since their mother's funeral, and Luke wasn't sure how he felt about it. He had begun to find the rhythm to his isolation. Alone, he could be as cool as he wanted to be. In the world, he was the loser. Luke had had enough of losing. Losing his mom, losing his home, losing his school, losing, and this he had a hard time framing even to himself, losing his boyhood. In high school, especially his snobby-assed prep school, he was encouraged to be someone he wasn't, someone who cared about girls and clothes and cars and beer and ski vacations in Colorado. He did not much care about any of those things, and if he did care, who at this school would notice? At 14, his voice hadn't changed, and his father bought his clothes at Walmart. To him, an elk hunt sounded like one more opportunity for someone to force him to be what he wasn't: a hunter, a sportsman, someone who gave a rat's ass about nature. His father once described his son's idea of the great outdoors as that unhappy space between the front door and the car door, and Luke had to admit he wasn't far off. He preferred the surreal world of Call of Duty. There he was not the pitiful Luke, the kid bullied at school, but the powerful and mysterious DEFCON 762, the envy of all his cyber enemies and allies. Luke only wished his dad appreciated how good he was at what he did. Whether he was fighting terrorists or zombies, DEFCON 762 could join any game and swing the odds in his team's favor. Almost no one could beat DEFCON 762, and no one at all could intimidate him. Tony. Back at the campsite that evening, the three sat around the fire and mostly just stared into it. There was not much else to do, and no place else to go. For some time they were silent, each deep in his private thoughts. When they did talk, they talked about nothing of consequence, and Tony was content with this. He appreciated the mindlessness of their conversation. Some things he chose not to think about, Angel's death chief among them. The wound was still too raw. Luke shocked him when he introduced her into the conversation. It was not like him, not at all. How did you meet Mom? I haven't told you? You told me, said Matt as he pushed a stray cinder back into the fire. Matt seemed eager to change the subject. Tony wondered why. He chose not to ask. You haven't told me, said Luke. At least not when I was old enough to remember. Tony hesitated. Let me compress this for Matt's sake, he said. I was in church with your grandmother. She dedicated a mass to my father who died 10 years earlier on that day. How old were you? 18. You were 8 when your father died? Yep, but that's a story for another day, said Tony. Anyhow, I looked over and I saw your mom a few pews ahead of me. The sunlight sort of flowed through the stained glass and lit up her hair like gold. She was so prayerful and peaceful, I swore she was an angel. That's why you called her Angel? From that first day on. I hadn't been to a weekday mass in years, but I went the next day hoping she was one of those daily mass Catholics. And there she was again. The third day I sat in front of her so she would notice me. I tried to look as pious as I could. That's a stretch, said Matt, grinning. Hey, smartass, I was in love. Did she notice you? Luke asked. Yeah, but you've got to remember, I was this poor, pockmarked tomboy. That he was. Truth be told, though, he had felt less burdened by his poverty or by his ethnicity than he did by his complexion, living as he had in Southern California, where looks mattered more than race or class. Tony added, about the only thing I had going for me was, well, persistence. Persistence? Don't underestimate it. I went to Mass for 6 weeks straight, 7 days a week. Your grandma was convinced I was going to become a priest. It was when she started making noise about sending me to the seminary, I got up the nerve to talk to my angel. And then, of course, my...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?